Ladies and gentlemen, let me just start off by saying it's been really nice seeing rocket launchers in general become a viable option once again in Season of the Chosen. All legendary rocket launchers saw a 30% damage increase, and while our exotic rocket launchers were individually tuned, most of them seemed to walk away with a good chunk of increased damage. One rocket launcher that was rarely ever discussed until recently is Deathbringer. This is a weapon that I covered back in Season of Arrivals, but with rocket launchers seeing that nice damage increase, I think it's worth another look. Deathbringer to me has always felt like an outlier within the weapon class, more or less due to its unique function. But it's one of those weapons that in the right situation could be capable of some pretty amazing things. And with it dealing more damage currently, could this be a contender in the highly competitive heavy slot? Or is it just a little too situational to truly be a top tier pick? Hopefully we can find an answer to that question in this review. But if at any point during the course of this video you find it useful, helpful, or enjoyable, feel free to leave it a like. And consider subscribing to the Ironworker Gaming channel, but only if you think the content is good enough to warrant your subscription. But let's get into the review with a look at Deathbringer's stats and perks. Deathbringer is an exotic void rocket launcher firing at 15 rounds per minute with one rocket in the magazine. For the stats, we'll pull in some solid numbers from Destiny Tracker. The blast radius sitting at 100 looks very impressive. Now I'm not exactly sure how this was calculated, but I suppose it does have the potential to cover a pretty wide area. The velocity at 42 is quite slow, but this kind of plays into Deathbringer's favor. The handling and reload stats though are quite good when looking at rocket launchers in general. The intrinsic trait is Dark Deliverance, fires remotely detonated projectiles that drop void orbs on combatants. Think of this more or less as shooting a Nova Bomb out of a rocket launcher. The exotic perk is Dark Descent. The further a void orb falls, the more powerful the detonation becomes. And keep in mind moving forward that it's not necessarily the total fall distance that affects the orb's damage, but rather the total amount of time the orb spends in the air. At the time of recording this video, there is no catalyst available for Deathbringer, but if you don't have this weapon yet and you would like to get your hands on it, you'll first need to finish the Shadowkeep main campaign and then complete the Symphony of Death quest. This is a multi-step exotic quest, and I don't want to get into the full rundown because this is a weapon review video, but there are plenty of great guides out there that can walk you right through it. But with that, let's head into the PvE section to check out Deathbringer's damage, functionality, and performance. Alright, as always, we'll touch on the functionality aspects first. If you just simply pull the trigger on Deathbringer, you'll shoot a void projectile that will detonate on impact. This will spawn out 7 Void Seeker orbs. But you can control the detonation of this projectile by pressing and holding the trigger, and then releasing it when you want it to detonate. With Deathbringer, you can carry 7 total rounds, and 8 if you have a Rocket Launcher Reserves mod equipped. Our base reload time clocks in at about 2.7 seconds, which, for a rocket launcher, is pretty solid. If you have a Rocket Launcher Loader mod equipped, you can reduce the reload time to approximately 2.1 seconds. With one copy of the Argent Ordnance Charged with Light mod equipped, which I do want to talk about a little further in this video, we can reload our rocket launcher in approximately 2.3 seconds. With both a rocket launcher loader mod and a copy of Argent Ordnance equipped, we can cut our reload time down to 1.97 seconds. In taking a look at these Void Seeker orbs created on detonation, they will lock onto and track their target pretty aggressively. And the longer they hang in the air, the more damage they will do, up to a certain point. Now, the blast from the initial projectile carries absolutely no damage. Which, I mean, this isn't necessarily a bad thing because you don't have to worry about blowing yourself up. This is always a plus for us careless rocket launcher users. But onto the damage numbers, and do keep in mind that PvE damage numbers in Destiny 2 are variable. They'll carry different values depending on the content scaling or the tier of the enemy. I've been doing all of my damage testing this season in the Conflux Lost Sector on Nessus, so if you want to compare your numbers to mine, this is where I'm at. Okay, with Deathbringer, what you don't want to do is point this thing directly at your target and pull the trigger. I mean, you can, but the initial projectile will explode on impact, the Seekers will spawn out, lock onto their target, and deal roughly 7,810 points of damage apiece. We multiply that by 7, and we're looking at 54,670 points of damage versus Carl. Ideally, what you're going to want to do is get this shot up in the air a little bit, and detonate it right over top of your target's head. That's going to allow these Seeker orbs to deal more damage. In this case, it's maxing out at 22,134. And for one of these orbs to achieve that damage, it will have to hang in the air for approximately 3 seconds before striking its target. So, in a perfect world, if each orb was carrying max damage, and they all tracked onto Carl, we would deal a healthy 154,938 points of damage in total. If we compare that to another exotic rocket launcher like Two-Tailed Fox, which is also hitting pretty hard this season, it's dealing 97,314 points of total damage from the blast, the impact, and the burn ticks. So, Deathbringer's potential damage is very impressive, but it actually can get pushed up a bit higher. The Argent Ordnance Charged with Light mod is specifically designed to increase the damage and reload speed of rocket launchers. You can equip up to 3 of these mods at one time to receive increased benefits with each. We already looked at the reload speed improvement with 1 copy equipped, and more is going to result in a quicker reload. But the damage. With 1 copy equipped, the maximum damage that a single orb can carry is now 26,561. That's a 20% damage increase, the same as high energy fire. With 2 copies equipped, an orb can now register a max of 27,677 points of damage on Carl, 25% more damage than our base value. And with 3 copies equipped, our max damage per orb comes in at 29,881, which is 35% higher than our base damage. So we're seeing a pretty good jump when going from 2 to 3 copies of Argent Ordnance. If you have 3 copies equipped, and all 7 Seeker Orbs were to land on Carl, we'd be looking at 209,167 points of damage from a single round fired. This is quite impressive, but these Argent Ordnance mods are expensive, costing 5 energy apiece. Also, they can only be equipped on Solar Affinity armor, and you will need to be charged with light before seeing the Godslayer Warhead buff. Running 3 copies of Argent Ordnance is inevitably going to decrease the amount of charged with light stacks that you can carry. And unlike high energy fire that gives us a 20% damage buff and only consumes a charged with light stack on a kill, Argent Ordnance will spend 1 stack of charged with light just for damaging an enemy with a rocket, which can result in a unique issue with Deathbringer. When you're on your last stack of charged with light, as soon as an orb makes contact with a target, your Godslayer Warhead buff is gonna go away. A few orbs could sneak in before the buff expires, but right here you can see this straggler coming in late and dealing base damage. So is it worth running Argent Ordnance with Deathbringer? I mean, maybe. You have the numbers, you saw the results, what you do with that information is your business. And for the performance, there's definitely some upside to using Deathbringer. First, big potential single shot damage, like really big. These orbs are almost guaranteed to outright down any red bar target. Majors, if they don't die to a single orb, they're pretty much going to be left dead to rights. And against boss tier targets, as long as you can keep them isolated, Deathbringer is going to take huge chunks out of their health bar. Another cool feature is Deathbringer can be used from behind cover. At least, cover that's low enough to shoot over. Since the objective is to detonate that initial projectile high above your target's head, you can just keep yourself tucked away, start shooting and start letting those orbs rain down, without ever needing to peek or gain line of sight. And the tracking nature of these Seekers does a pretty good job at helping these orbs find a target. And Deathbringer's another weapon that can fare pretty well in Gambit. This weapon can really take enemy players off guard, because you can down them without ever actually seeing them, or having them see you. It does a really nice job against the void shielded primeval envoys, and it does a really nice job of clearing out adds during the primeval phase while still putting some damage on the primary target. But some drawbacks. Deathbringer is going to carry 1 less rocket when compared to other rocket launchers. This might not be a huge deal, but it's definitely something to factor in. And then due to the weapon's general functionality with the shoot, hold, detonate mechanic, you're probably not going to be able to touch off shots as quickly as you could with a standard rocket launcher. And you always run the risk of a target teleporting away, or in the case of a boss, an immune phase activating before the Seeker orbs can land. And then we have some consistency issues creep in. There's no deterministic way to have these Void Seeker orbs lock onto a certain target in a pack of enemies. With a standard rocket launcher, aim at the bad man, shoot the bad man. With Deathbringer, aim above the bad man. Seeker orbs lock onto the nearest target in the proximity. So standard rocket launchers could definitely have a leg up on it here. But you also have to watch how high you shoot your initial projectile above a target's head, even if they're isolated. If you detonate too high, those Seeker orbs could spread out more than you'd like, with some of them falling outside of the proximity that allows tracking to kick in. And if you aim too low, obviously you're going to miss out on some damage. And these orbs always have the potential of hitting a solid surface and detonating prematurely. So, I mean, there's a lot of ways things can go wrong here. And I think that may be why many people have shied away from this weapon for so long. The inconsistencies can drive you crazy. Also, no catalyst for this weapon, so no orb generation potential here. And lastly, you do need vertical space for Deathbringer to really be effective. A great example is the Presage mission boss arena. You have a very low ceiling, so there's no room for these Seekers to hang in the air to reach their max damage potential. If you can't send that initial shot skyward, Deathbringer is going to lose a ton of damage and a lot of its effectiveness. Well, let's move into the PvP section, see how Deathbringer's holding up in there, and then get things wrapped up. Alright, starting off with the damage numbers. If you were to fire Deathbringer directly at an enemy, or detonate the initial projectile very near an enemy, you can see as little as 224 points of damage. But notice that no additional Void Seeker orbs spawn on that direct impact. The maximum damage we can see from a Void Seeker orb that's been in the air for a while is 330 points of damage. So, moral of the story, it's only going to take one Void Seeker orb to down an enemy Guardian regardless of the hang time, versus a Guardian in their roaming super. At the lower end of the damage spectrum, we're looking at 102 points of damage. So here, we need 2 Void Seeker orbs to land to down our target. On the upper end of things, we're seeing 151 points of damage. So, here again, we need 2 orbs to land. So unlike in PvE, in PvP, the airtime that these Void Seeker orbs are seeing has very little impact on its effectiveness. For Deathbringer's performance in the Crucible, I think its biggest upside is the element of surprise. Being able to down targets without ever gaining line of sight can be very, very useful. With Deathbringer, you have the ability to take out targets who are turtled up behind a piece of cover, an enemy player that snuck around the corner to regen their health, or a Guardian who thinks they're all comfy cozy hiding behind their glacier wall. And if you're playing Control, since most capture points are shielded to a certain extent, you can shoot over any barriers and take out enemy players trying to cap the point. And the round fired from Deathbringer is extremely quiet. You can barely hear that initial shot humming in, so many times, enemies won't know it's coming if they don't see it. Anytime I've ever been killed by Deathbringer, it definitely creates one of those "what just killed me" moments. And then Deathbringer pops up in the kill feed, and I'm like, oh. And since we are spawning 7 Void Seeker orbs on a detonation, there is a lot of multi-kill potential packed in here. Plus, we have the ability to deal with roaming supers. But both the initial projectile and the Seeker orbs travel pretty slowly. If an enemy player does see that shot rolling in, they'll have time to react and vacate the area. And once those Void Seeker orbs are spawned, they are able to be outrun. And the damage coming from Deathbringer is not immediate. It does take a moment for those Seekers to spawn out. So if you're in a panic situation where you could jump up and blast the ground with a standard rocket launcher, things won't work out as well with Deathbringer. You'll probably take the enemy target down, but they'll definitely have a window to down you too. Plus, this is a heavy exotic, and given the limited uptime of heavy weapons in the Crucible, maybe you want to spend that exotic slot on a special or primary weapon. I don't know. I'm not you. It's your call. For the verdict, in PvE, Deathbringer is an extremely strong weapon, but its usability is situational. Not every activity or engagement is going to play into its strengths. And the damage output isn't completely reliable. Orbs can walk onto the wrong target, they can hit a hard surface on the way down, or stray off course. There's a lot of variables, but these variables come with very high damage potential. So this weapon, in the right scenario, could be extremely useful. In PvP, this is another weapon where if you really value the utility that it provides, it's a good option. But this isn't really a run and gun heavy weapon, so it might not fit into every player's game plan all that well. Deathbringer always seemed to reward patience and planning over outright aggression. But hey, if you never tried this weapon out, give it a go, you might really enjoy it. But if you did enjoy this video, please remember to leave it a like and consider subscribing to the Ironworker Gaming channel to catch much more Destiny 2 content in the very near future. To catch me live, I will occasionally be streaming right here on YouTube. If you'd like to contact me, you can look for Ironworker814 on Twitter, join our channel Discord, link will be in the description, or comment down below and I will do my best to get back to you. And with all that being said, I'd like to thank you for taking the time out of your day to check out this weapon review. You guys are awesome, and I will catch you on the next one.